Oh my, welcome to the Victoria Leadership Collective. We are so honored to have Adam Olsen joining us today. Adam, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm doing really well. I'm looking out. The snow is melting. Soccer practice was canceled though, so we're gonna have a bunch of rusty soccer players this weekend, that's for sure.
It's remarkable, isn't it, when we get snow? Like the whole city stops.
my kids are super happy. I'm not so much, but
Well, we're so lucky to have you come on. Of course, for those that don't know, you are a two-term MLA. You were representing the Green Party in BC politics. You were a leader of the Green Party. You are an MLA for Saanich North and the Islands. Very, very lucky to talk to you. You also have a municipal experience. And so let's start off where we
I
start
grew up
off.
on an Indian reserve, so I've got some First Nations governance experience in life, rather than not at the table, but in life. So there's a few different kinds of brands of governance here. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Or
so much. Okay,
brands.
so where we'll start is where we start with our speakers, is trying to figure out, where does leadership come from? Why are you so successful? Why are you separate from so many others in our community and able to lead? Where does that come from? We want to bottle it, sell it.
Yeah, I have no idea. And it's part of the reason why I went back to Royal Roads actually, and it's at the very heart of the research question that I'm undertaking my master's of leadership. Is because I don't know. It was not an intentional thing for me, and I think that the path that I'm on right now, the leadership path that I'm on right now, is to become more intentional in my leadership, to understand better what those things are that I've done well, what those things are that I've not done so well, and to be able to do the former better and to do the latter less. So that's kind of the goal that I have. But I just found myself over the last 16 years in increasingly influential and important offices, having increasingly influential and important conversations. And I left politics seemingly on. I think some people had the perspective that I was still on the rise and I had viewed myself for at least for that office, that was enough, and that my leadership um, will be elsewhere.
Who knows?
So
You could come back. You could come back.
well, I'm still
Uh,
fairly young in the business. No, honestly, like
right?
I retire at a time that I still have like a career ahead of me probably. So I think understanding those things, and being able to identify those qualities and the values that underpin them, I think is really important, and it's part of the journey that I've been on academically.
So Rishi and I have Rishi.
Mhm.
You're gonna have to jump in because I'm so excited to have Adam here. But we've sort of debated this question.
So
We
is
have
Rishi.
right. I know.
You noted the excitement, yeah. All right.
So there's kind of two pathways, okay? And one of them is like I'm coming from a place that leadership is actually a collective. It's a basket of personal experiences that one goes through, and there can be minute to the point of what time you get up in the morning, and do you make your bed, and how do you react to people, and how do you treat them, and that sort of collective experience over time evolves into sort of a leadership thing, okay?
Mhm.
And because of just making these decisions, Rish, and we kind of believe each other, but Rish is coming from, and maybe you want to expand on this, Rish, is that there is there's a cultural piece. Like, it does come back from how you grew up, who you grew up with, etc. We're so blessed and honored to have you here in your First Nations capacities. I'd love to hear about that. But Rish, isn't that kind of where we've been coming from?
Yeah, I'm just giving you a lot of space here, John, because I know how excited you are to have Adam there.
Not so much.
Okay. I've never heard him talk this much before, Adam. What you?
Yeah,
Right.
right.
Holy smokes!
As if I will say, Reese, before you answer his non-question or his question, whatever it was, you presented to our class last year or at the end of last term, and talked about some research that you did, and actually your presentation was far more influential later on than I had deemed it to be at the beginning, because I was on a path to do a organizational thesis, and I had a group, and I had kind of originally had passed off first person research. I had thought that it was going to be just, navel gazing and a whole bunch of ego stroking, and so I just written it off. But having listened to you, I had those initial feelings kind of were sanded down, and the rough corners were rounded a bit, and I'm now on a path to do a first person.
Great.
And I think that in part it is because of the question that John asked me to begin with, which was, where does it come from? And I don't know. And I think we often look elsewhere for the answers when the answers are in here somewhere, and we can generate that ourselves. So I just wanted to raise my hands to you. You did a tremendous job, and actually very influential in the path I'm on right now. So
Thanks, Adam. That's like I'm speaking to another grad panel tomorrow on the first person action research, and apparently there's more people now moving towards it. And even the faculty, I had challenged them. I said, you've all done your PhD and you've written a thesis and all that, but who's had the opportunity to do that deep dive into themselves
yeah.
to learn where this comes from? And for folks like us who we've been around for a while, we've been in opportunities and had that privilege to be in leadership privilege, and we did some work to get there, but understanding how and why,
Mhm.
this is what I really wanted to understand. And man, it was so taxing on myself, and learning about the difficulties of having uncomfortable conversations with myself, challenging myself with past conversations with my uncles and godfathers, and why did I learn, and how am I this way? So it's so intense. And I know at first it was just, I think people just did first person theses because of COVID, and they weren't allowed to go out to reach out to businesses. But man, what an opportunity. And I'm going to continue to push it on anyone I challenge them to really look deep inside. But that's what we get with these conversations in this vodcast. It's, you obviously have this sense of confidence, Adam, believe in yourself or not. Like, we see it. The skills and competencies that you've gained have come maybe from your Indigenous background, maybe from your time on the soccer pitch, maybe from a mentor. So what we challenge people to do, we put them on the spot to just go back and think, is there something that you can relate to, you remember, like what helped you maybe build this confidence to put yourself, like we've put ourselves out there completely. For derogatory comments, I was racially accosted just a couple of weeks ago, but we have these skills and competencies just to deal with it, and it's okay. We're still going to put ourselves out there. So I'm wondering where some of that confidence may have come from.
I definitely comes from my parents and my grandparents. There's just no question about
Really?
it. I have
Wow.
two very different parents. I have a parent who is very vocal, who is very encouraging, and also never um, never held back. Was very honest, to the point where I think that people, when they saw it from the outside, they're like, "Wow, that's kind of harsh." But as the kid that grew up, that grew up in that environment, I always knew that it did not come from a malicious place. It came from a very loving place. But it was also like there was nothing that I was going to be able to not. There was nothing that I was going to fail at. I was
That's great.
always going to be able to accomplish what I set my mind to. And so that's a very, very important underlying value, like right at the foundation of everything as a kid growing up, that you're going to be able to do this. And I remember to the point where my there was some honesty, like that I wasn't the best soccer player on the field, right? And I was like, why would you say that to your kid, that you're not, but that in fact what I needed to do in order to make up for my deficiencies in skill was fill it in with my expertise in work ethic.
Yeah.
That's the thing that you can always do. You can always grind more.
Yeah.
You can always grind harder at something. You might not necessarily be the most skillful out on the field, but the Maradona or the Pele that, with the ball that seems to just be tied to the foot. Um, but you can go into the check, you can be there and win the 50-50 ball. You can, continue with that soccer analogy. So there was always that encouragement. It's like, yeah, you're not going to be the superstar, Adam. I was like, and I've even actually talked to my kid about this as well. Like, you're not going to be the superstar on the field, but you'll be the most reliable. You'll be the one that shows up at the time that the practice starts at, not 5 minutes later. And you're going to be the kid that in the tough game is kind of holding the team together. And that was the kind of teaching that I had. The other parent that I had was far less vocal and taught me through his I was trying to be very, yes, his. So now you know which is which.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actions. And I'd say that both of them have these qualities. But I have one of my parents is just a real activist and
Sorry.
and relentless, absolutely relentless. And I think that when I take a look at the key aspects of my leadership in the legislature was well, in fact, one of the favorite things that I've ever had anybody say about me is Vaughn Palmer said that when I had the hide of a minister between my teeth, I never let go.
Mm.
And
That's high
like,
praise from him. High
yeah,
praise.
I was like, and I
Yeah.
quoted it, and I actually put it on a resume actually,
Oh, fabulous.
or on a cover letter. Uh,
That's good.
Like you
yeah,
need that. Give me a
like
break.
just in case you're wondering the level of tenacity with which I will fight for you, here it is.
That's great.
Anyway,
So,
but it doesn't have to be like a really aggressive type of tenacity. It's just a persistent type of tenacity that I learned. Experiencing all of the kind of obstacles in life that you can imagine experiencing, and yet still just continuing to show up and do
yeah.
what needs to be done. So,
Yeah, I want to build on that. Okay, and I want to go to
sure.
a place that some will criticize me for. I don't care because it's sort of these kind of conversations need to happen. I am clearly a white man in living in a privileged society where I'm at. Adam, you're also visually the same, but you are culturally a First Nations person growing up in this society. Rishi, you are a brown man living in this society. Okay, okay. So uh, I've been called all kinds of names, a-holes, all kinds of things because of my behavior, but I don't have this inherent sort of already built-in bias and difficulty that let's say you two do. How do you grow from a confrontational place in this society? How do you learn from that? How do you deal with that and grow and provide leadership?
My biggest challenge was that I heard what people really think before they knew who I was. And that was a real challenge because of the way I present. Um, I've lived 49 years on an Indian reserve, right? So, and I'm a member of that Indian reserve. So it's not that I'm a visitor here. This is my community. This is home. And I'm a few shades paler than the rest of my relatives here, but this has been my experience, and not entirely, but so I've seen how and I've heard how the population thinks and feels before they find out where I come from. And so for me, it was rarely direct, rarely directed at me, but it was directed at people that I love, and it was directed at my family. And I've also seen how members of my family who who present a lot more First Nations, how they're treated differently than I am, and very close members of my family. how they're treated differently. It breaks my heart that is the way it is. But so
But you have a warrior mentality, if I'm going to use this analogy, whether it's racist or prejudice. When I look at you, Adam, I get that tenacity. I get that forthrightness. I get that work ethic. I get all of that. How come you have that and some other members of your community might not?
or any member of any community, really.
Or absolutely.
You know, I think that it has a lot to do with how I was raised. It has a lot to do with the values that were instilled in me as a person. Now, how those values, it's up to the individual then as well. And I think that perhaps this is a blend of the two parts of this conversation that you're talking about here. It is in part me, my makeup, and it's in part the socialization that I've experienced as a person. So two people can be given the same experiences with the same values and come out with two completely different approaches to life. So to some extent it's internal and to some extent it's external.
The gift, I think, John, the gift that we can have as those who are different, and be it color, be it culture, be it weight, height, whatever it is, there's the differences is finding your ability to take those comments and materialize them with an appreciative lens and then come out stronger. Like you just I didn't realize this, but every time I was called chunky as a kid or Paki or Hindu or whatever it is, you start to build these competencies and skills to be able to deal with it. So as much as you're getting from, I had one mentor who told me I was great, and I would go to that place, and here's all this other hate being thrown at me, but I'd go to that place. But the hate now, you've built these competencies just to be calm, and unfortunately, it kind of normalized in my mind. But first, like we had an example of where we were racially accosted. We sitting outside putting up signs, and John, the difference of your reaction compared to my reaction, I'm like, this is normal. It's okay. It's all right. It's not okay, but I understand it. I can deal with it. But this is something so if someone was to read my thesis, if a newcomer was to read it, or an Indigenous person, there's a quote that I found from Angela Sterrett in her book Unbreakable, where she talks about where she got her confidence from being an Indigenous person. And I got my confidence from being different. And all those who may be trans or, again, overweight or whatever you might be, gaining that confidence from your differences is what I think people really need to learn. And man, you really get some new skills and competencies and leadership skills and competencies, and you can teach others.
Okay, here's my question that I think.
So hold on.
Okay, sorry. Go. Yeah.
I want to run off of this a little bit because I think, in just listening to Rishi's comments here, I'm in between, right? And I'm an in between. I am an in betweener in this, and so my experience has always been the Indian in a room full of white people and the white person in a room full of Indians, right?
I get that too because I'm Hindu and it's all Punjabis and I don't speak Punjabi, so here I am in a room with all these people who are Punjabis. Like my wife's Sikh, I'm Hindu. Her grandpa took him 6 years to even talk to me, and I'm just like, you're right. It's very interesting where you're going to go with this. I'm looking forward to hearing.
It's that tension has meant that from a very young age, growing up on an Indian reserve, as my relative's relative, with this presentation, requires a certain kind of resilience, a certain kind of tenacity to then go into the legislature presenting myself as a Satanich person, which I did twice. The paddle jacket that I wore into the legislature is right there. I didn't show up in a suit and tie. I showed up in a paddle jacket. I was sending a specific message about my identity that I was carrying into the legislature with me. And it was in stark contrast to the skin color that people would expect to see of a person in a paddle jacket going in. So there's these contrasts. And when I went to school, I was always with my buddies, I was the Indian that they could ask questions to about, right? Or that they would, could call me names and they could bug me. So I haven't lived, my life hasn't been free from kind of racialization, racialized comments being pointed towards me. However, what's interesting is even though the line, it's almost an invisible line between my two halves exists, it's a place that I can retreat to, and it's a place that I actually uniquely inhabit.
Yeah.
So I've often talked about straddling a ditch or the yellow line down the middle of the road that outside my house. These are analogies that I use
Or
to
the
describe
bridge.
where I am, or the
But
bridge, right?
but that, like, just imagine, John, like, just try to imagine you, me, just try, like, some people have that, again, I'll say an opportunity, but imagine the skills that you're gaining for life in general by having to deal with that continuously. Your level of trust in individuals is tested, right? Your level of their knowledge, your level of listening, digesting what they're saying. It's all in those skills, leadership skills and competencies. I didn't really learn that until I read from Angela. I'm like, oh, why am I looking at this from a real positive, appreciative lens? And what have I gained? And that's part of my thesis. Again, first person thesis. Like, it was, as they say, life changing. Like, I wouldn't change it for anything. It's
So even
fantastic.
though this is
I think they should only go to first person.
Oh,
I don't think that we should burden organizations for the level of research that's happening in that Masters of Leadership. That the first person is process is actually perfect for that level of master's thesis, because it's it's about, for me, I went back as a mature student to learn about leadership from a theoretical perspective, and the first person I'm finding is allowing me to explore that.
so even though this is the Victoria Leadership Collective, honestly, this could easily be world-class leadership collective. What I'm hearing from the two of you is extraordinary. Therefore, let's apply some of that rather than looking backwards, looking forwards. Let's not be political about this, but the world seems in a very troubled place. And the two of you have internalized conflict in a positive way, I think, in a productive way, in a contributive way. There are a whole lot of people that are moving towards taking conflict and turning it into hate. And they're finding that very easy to do. And so we're starting to see the impact of that on our country. Therefore, what is it that we can say to our fellow citizens? What is it that we can encourage people to start thinking about or doing so that we don't become that person that gets insulted and then pulls out a knife? Because that is that not uniquely Canadian? Is that what makes us different? And I'm scared we're going to lose that.
It's what I wrote about. It's utilizing uncomfortable conversations to build relationships. Just on LinkedIn, just before this, I posted something about the increase in hate across Canada, and it's growing and it's getting worse. But having the ability to have this type of conversation, learn a little bit more about Adam and his cultural background, and about him, about you, John, and your background, which we've talked about on different episodes. You now know more about me, and which I may have hesitated to tell you otherwise, but now here we are, giving us some space for uncomfortable conversations, and I welcome it. I welcome people coming up and asking me where I'm from. I'll go to people like yourself, John, and I'll be sitting in the 7-Eleven with my kids, and I'll walk up to someone who's mainstream and be like, "Where are you from?" And they're like, "Excuse me." I'm like, "Where are you from?" They're like, "Well, I'm from here." I'm like, "Well, you asked me the same thing. Where are your parents from? Where is your background?" And we get to these really interesting conversations about their background and their culture, where they came from, and they're learning about themselves. I'm like, "What does your name mean?" But I don't know. It doesn't mean anything. I go, "Well, it means something, if not a meaning, but it was, you were gifted it by someone, and why did they give it to you?" So I get to have all these amazing conversations because I've built these skills and competencies, and I've wrote a thesis on it, so I don't shy away from it on anything. It's fantastic, and hopefully, my goal moving forward is to, like I sent a tweet to the Mexican president, Trudeau, and Trump. I sent a tweet to them and say, "Hey, read my thesis. Thanks for having some uncomfortable conversations and getting us away from these impending tariffs." Not that they're going to read it, but why not?
Leadership.
No fear. Have no fear. Let's go out there and have some strong, healthy conversations.
You know what's interesting? You say, "Where are you from?" And I'll twist that and say, "Where do you belong?" Right? Which is an
Yeah.
equally challenging conversation for people to be able to have these days because of the, and I think that in some part it's the response to your question. Where we belong is often not how we frame where we are, or do we understand that where we are spiritually and emotionally is disconnected from where we actually belong, like where we actually should be, right? And a lot of people right now are existing in a place that they can afford to exist, not the place that they would choose to be if
Yeah.
they were able to be if they were able to choose.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting little twist on what Rishi said, but I think the instructive piece around um, the instructive piece around having difficult conversations is, of course, we've just come through a time in which there's whole aspects of our society that we can't have any conversations about for fear of being absolutely just xed from the
Yeah.
xed from the ability. And I existed in a political atmosphere where the threat of being canceled at any minute for a past or present tweet or thought that was deemed to be inappropriate. Even the fear of a comment that was said in a context that culturally was maybe not great, but also, it was a different cultural moment at the time that it was said, is now
Right.
being
Thanks.
evaluated by the current, right? So we have lost, where Rishi's work is so important about even just drawing attention to the fact that we should be able to, as mature people, have difficult conversations. There shouldn't be a situation where we can't have a conversation um, because it's too toxic. In fact, the only way to decrease the levels of toxicity is for us to be having open dialogue. I just listened on my way back from a meeting that I had this morning. I just listened to a podcast. It's Ezra Klein's podcast, and he's like by far a progressive Democrat would be probably the way, and he had a conservative Republican, and it was, and on the issues you could tell there's a ton of daylight between the two. However, on the need to bring people together, on the need to create a democratic debate where there was space for them to disagree on the details, there was not only was it agreement, it was a beautiful conversation. I should tell people to go and listen to it
Yeah.
Sure. Maybe
because
send me the link. I'll put it up online.
it's
Yeah.
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 And if you don't listen to it in the week, then unfortunately the New York Times is going to charge you for it now, which is the model they've done.
Oh my
But
God.
but this material is worth paying for because what they actually talk about is that there is within the American system actually is designed around coalition building, and distinctly they have not been coalition building. In fact, they've been hardening their positions to the point where the dysfunction in the system is that the current politicians are not living within, they explain it a lot better than I do, but it is an example of where in the current political moment, having a Republican and a Democrat, having a progressive and a conservative sitting in the room, or a liberal and a conservative sitting in the room together and working through the issues of the day seems like, it just seems. I read a headline yesterday. It said Trump is forcing the Canadian political leaders to agree with each other. And I was like, well, that might be the best thing that he's ever done is forced us to sit down and have a
Yeah, no
conversation
doubt.
with each other because the way it was going was increasing levels of toxicity, right? So,
So one of the truisms about the way we now communicate, that could be another show. I hope, Adam, that we've excited you enough that you might join
Yeah,
us again in the
please.
future. Is that people like their information in bite sizes and smaller. So we're getting up to half an hour now, and we'll likely end ourselves and do another one, I hope, in the very near future.
sure.
Nonetheless, I just want to end this. Arish, of course, I look forward to your comments, but look, guys, I think we're in the eye before the eye of the hurricane. We're We're at the calm before the storm. And we need your leadership skills and your life experiences and everything you've gathered to this moment more than ever.
Well, then let me say this, John. Let me
Please, I
say this.
encourage you to
You
keep
come
going.
from that comment comes from a very privileged position. And
Okay.
what I would like to
Yeah.
just acknowledge is that in the community that I was raised in,
Mm.
the storm has been happening for the last 175 years.
Yes.
It has
Yes.
been a blizzard of of statutory and regulatory just gridlock
Abuse. Abuse.
oppression. So yes, you're right. We are collectively experiencing a tough time, and part of the work that I'm doing right now is sitting in the legislature last spring. I realized, like actually there are some pretty local issues that need to be dealt with here, and that there's also some issues that show up as an MLA that are fine issues for me to be working on, but not actually my priority anymore, right? And so it's in part of the reason why I'm not an MLA any longer. But I did want to just say that it, you know, not to point a finger at you, but we often
It's okay.
feel like feel like oh my goodness, we're under attack by a bully from the States. Well, actually, there's segments of our population that have been under attack by the bullies in Ottawa and the bullies in Victoria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it
I
just seems
understand.
to me that we need to point that out because that's part of the issue that I'm really worried about right now in context to your question is that we stop doing everything else that we need to do so that we can spend 100% of our time worrying about Donald Trump,
Yes.
which is exactly what he wants us to do. He wants to consolidate our attention on him and him alone.
Yes.
And
It's
in doing
working.
that, we will then see vast aspects of our society be neglected in ways that I think could cause us real trouble.
The reaction has been very interesting to watch from me and some of my fellow visible minority people who've dealt with a lot of the troubles. Like we're in the eye of the storm, sure, but it's going to continue. There's going to be a next crisis and next crisis and next crisis. And to see the reaction of some of our leaders to these threats, I was like, wow, like they've never been pushed to the way
No,
they have. They've never been bullied. I'm like, why are you acting this way? Be calm, be reasonable, think about a good strategy and move forward and don't react the way the bully would react. And it's just been like I'm deep into this in intergovernmental relations. I'm on it minute by minute and helping out in the provincial government. But it's just been very interesting, and I really admire what you say. And thanks for bringing that up, Adam. Like, no, it's been happening. It's happening now, and it's going to continue to happen. So this again is that leadership test, like learn how to deal with these things because it's not going to stop. There'll be another one attempting to come your way. So again, learn how you will personally deal with it and learn those skills and competencies in yourself. And I'm so glad to hear you're doing the first person because it's life changing. It's amazing.
it is.
I'm completely different. I could be such a aggressive dick, I guess, before, but it's changed me completely. And it's because I've taken the time to learn about myself.
I'm very like I found myself quite introspective from this, and I haven't even started like I'm still waiting. In fact, just as we've been talking, my supervisor got back to me and said you need to fix some things in your ethics review. So
Oh, did you?
I'm not even I've just done the proposal because I switched gears very late. So
I'll
I haven't
tell you
even
something, Adam. I'm the
started.
when they talk about that one person who had their ethics review go forward without one change, that's me. I was the one. They didn't ask for any suggestions, no revisions. I went through there, and I was so surprised. And I try to tell everyone that, just as just because I want, because it's not easy to get through. Not one
No, well,
revision.
I'm close. I'm close. I have to just go
Good.
back and highlight the changes that I made. But yeah, I mean, I think that we are we had a conversation in our family the other day because we watched Survivor,
Awesome.
right? So they it's a formula, and so the formula is that if your name is first mentioned after after the challenge, it's unlikely that you're the one that's going home, right? Like and they start with talking about sending Adam home, and then eventually they start to realize that, oh, actually it's John that has to go home. by the time that the vote comes. And so usually the first person, so I was saying to my wife, I was like, I'm really glad that Trump focused on us first because his attention span is so short. He's going to be distracted by something and he'll forget about us.
Yeah.
I never had this announcement that he made about Gaza. I never had that in my, like,
Right.
that was mind blowing when that came out of his
Right.
mouth. So we are in for a very, very interesting and very, I think, quite toxic time over the next 4 years that we have to be resilient for. So
Thank you, Adam. Keep
yeah,
driving forward, and like you, full admiration for me. I look forward to reading your thesis.
yeah. Well, thank you, and look forward to maybe speaking to future grad panels.
Yes, it's fun.